Hello.
Hi
Hi
everyone.
guys. Hi Vivek. Hi Barnish. Hi Srimant. Hi Julius. Nice meeting you for the first time. Hey Praveen. Hi Pooja.
Hi, hello.
Hi Ganu. Hi Pradeep.
Hi, sir.
Hey Pankaj. All right. We're getting our cameras on. Hey Divyanshu. Long time Divyanshu. Haven't seen you now.
Same here.
Hey Gino.
Hi, Prasad.
All right. So should we get going?
Yep.
Awesome. So thank you guys for joining us for this month's session. This month, I want to talk about personas and really how they use, because part of the thing is pretty much every portfolio that I see and every most of the designers that I talk to kind of understand how personas are useful, but they don't really know how to make it useful. So it's kind of like we know the theory of how personas are useful, but really do they work or not? That's a bigger question as far as most of us designers are concerned. And what I want to do is over the next 3 days, I want us to kind of deep dive into personas, start thinking about what a persona is, what is the minimum amount of information you need in a persona, and then based on that persona, now how do you kind of drive your product? Okay. Now, the question is like, how would I build a persona? How do I? That's not something we will cover as part of this session, partly because that in itself is a pretty large topic by itself. But what I do want to talk about is, okay, assuming that you have a persona, can you tell that this is a good persona, and then how do you leverage it? So that's the core goal. If there are any questions or thoughts at any point in time, just raise your hand. You have a little icon at the bottom that will indicate that you want to ask a question, and that also pushes you up on my, I see a lot of little pictures, so it pushes you on the first row, first column, so I can see that you have a question and I can ask you. Cool. Go ahead, Saurabh. Let's start off the presentation. Awesome. So our goal, and this is something I tell everyone, is like, it's to build a community where people have deep conversations and prepare for rockstar careers. Now, for those that are already familiar, there are a couple of words that are really important in here. For those of you that are not familiar, the first one is deep conversations, and the second one is rockstar career, right? Deep conversations are conversations where you make friends, where you argue, and you basically challenge what you know and what the other person knows, and you grow together, right? So it's at the end of the day, it's a community where you are growing together. And one of the things that I would say is what you give to the community is what you get. Because at the end of the day, it's not us giving you gyan one way, but rather it's about creating an ecosystem of people who are all helping each other grow. That's one aspect. The second aspect is rockstar careers. Now, one of the things that we do within our ecosystem here is we do not say UI, UX, right? There's only UX. Part of the reason is, it's like saying compounder doctor, right? Well, every doctor knows a compounder's job. So you should not say you're a compounder doctor. You are a doctor, right? And that's the same perspective. And then the second aspect is with the rockstar career, there are lots of companies, lots of jobs, right? And our perspective is it's not about getting all the jobs that are out there, right? It's about going for the cream of the crop, the top jobs that are out there, the jobs that where you have mature design systems, where you can learn, where you're building products for billions of people, and you're kind of thinking about changing status quo. Those are the kinds of jobs that we're talking about. So it's not, just getting a job and being happy with it. So that's not the reason for why we work hard, right? So that is our goal, is not just any job, but the rock star jobs or the rock star careers where you can write your ticket to anywhere in the world, any company in the world. That is the kind of careers that we're preparing for. Okay. And so that is our common shared vision that comes in here. So with me sharing this vision, obviously we have a lot of existing community members, but we also have Saurabh. Hey Saurabh, if you could quickly say hi.
Hi.
थोड़ा और बताओ ना यार.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Saurabh Singh, and I have been working on this initiative since a year, and we have been doing this initiatives to help people prepare for rockstar UX careers. And what I do in the community is I help curate the content and train people who are coming in our ecosystem, and I help them by giving feedback. And yes, I enjoy doing that. Thank you.
Thanks, Saurabh. We also have Shravani who's helping us. Shravani, could you go ahead? And by the way, do not confuse her age with experience. She knows more than I do in some cases. Go ahead, Shravani.
Yeah, hello everyone. So I've been with this community from the start. So my part in this community is to see the engagement basically and kind of give feedback to the people whoever have doubts. People reach out to me for the doubts in a couple of design concepts. So I'll give feedback and I'll be tracking the academy, I mean the trainings and all. And yeah, I'll evaluate people and will make sure that everybody is ready for the rockstar UX careers.
Thanks, Shravani. And then we also have Rajiv, who's part of the team. Rajiv, you want to quickly introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hey guys, my name is Rajiv, and probably almost everybody who is on this group, I think I have had voice call conversations with you. So hi in person, at least on video. So basically, I am responsible to understand your problems and needs, and then I have to communicate with the team so that they can take appropriate actions. So that's a job role that I part of. Yeah.
Thanks, Rajiv. So all of us are designers. So Saurabh is a designer. Shravani is a designer. Between the three of us, like we've all worked with multiple companies, multiple projects, and then we've kind of come down here. Rajiv is a student, as well as his dream is to become a designer, but he's also using the knowledge he's gaining from us to kind of help us build out the community. So that's where Rajiv kind of straddles both sides. He's a designer and a student at the same time, and his goal is to talk to 500 people by the end of the year. So I don't know how far you've got, but yeah, so that's his goal. As many people as he can interview, he kind of gets his research chops from there. So feel free to reach out to him or talk to him about anything, and then he would love to talk to you. All right, let's go on to the next slide. Okay, so rules and guidelines. This is a safe environment, right? We are going to be very respectful of each other. We all participate and contribute actively. Again, what you give to the community is what you get. And understand that you are not trying to make anybody, impress anybody. It's at the end of the day, it's you being happy with what you're learning, and you getting the support from other people, and you supporting other people, because everybody is a student and a learner in this ecosystem. Be kind and courteous to everybody, right? Respect each other's privacy. Okay. Keep your cameras on for most, for as much as you can. For one simple reason is, when I'm giving the class, I'm just looking at this slide, but I don't really know if somebody has a question in their mind or whatever. So putting your cameras on allows me to look at your faces, and then it allows me to see if there's any question or anybody has any comment about anything. So that's one thing that is very helpful for me as I deliver this program. And one other thing is, again, given that this is a community, and we made it deliberately cheap, but we put in a certain amount so people that come in are serious about it, but at the same time we've not made it so expensive that people would think twice about it. So the overall perspective here is, this is a community. We spread the word out, because the more smarter people we have in the community, the more passionate people we have in the community, the better the kinds of discussions we have. and the better the kind of learning we have. So it's all about bringing the right kind of people into the ecosystem so we can all learn and grow from each other. So that's the idea. So if you believe the workshop is valuable to you, please spread the word. We will be talking about this more at the end of every session. Cool. Any questions or thoughts so far? Awesome. Let's go. Let's go to the next slide. Okay. So here are two personas, right? Now imagine that you're a designer, you're a product designer, and your research team has given you these personas A and B, and they said, all right, so go ahead and design a product. Okay. Now the question is, which of these personas is better for designing a product? All right. Take a look at it for a couple of seconds, and then Saurabh will start the poll, and then you can give in your thoughts.
Every option
Wow,
is
this is the
complete.
first. This is the first. Everybody is basically neck to neck. Okay, guys, we got 20 more people.
Come on, little more for 80%. 2 more votes.
One of the things that I say is it's important to make a decision. It's not important whether you're right or wrong, because the more decisions you make, the more you learn from your mistakes, or you learn from, mistakes is where you learn most. Successes, you really don't learn much. So the point is just make a decision and just put it in there. Awesome. All right. So more or less, it's kind of even, but quite a few people have said B is good. Anjali Singh's profile is good. And then I think the largest number have basically said both of them are good to go. All right. So here's the dirty secret. Let's go on to the next slide. Neither of them is good to go. Okay. Neither of these personas will be good enough for you to make a decision. Now let's actually break this down. So you will reach the same conclusion by the time we're done. But let's break this down and understand why neither of these work for us as product designers. Let's go to the next slide. And which is what today's session is. Today's session is to really understand what a good persona is and how we go about leveraging it. So let's go to the next slide, Saurabh.
So we can talk it here only, Prasad.
So let's talk about it towards the end. If people do not understand the answer, let's talk about it to the end. I think that would be much more fun, at least for me. I think a lot of people will have questions, and if I don't answer your questions by the end, if you're not able to figure out why neither of these are good, you can ask me again. All right, let's go to the next slide. Okay, so let's actually understand what decisions do you make when doing a user persona, right? So feel free to type it in. What kind of decisions do you make? Just type it into your chat box and then we can look at it. So user needs is not a decision, isn't it? User needs and behaviors are data that you get. So using that data, what decision do you make? So Nirupama says, what is their motivation, goals, need? But that is what is in a persona, right? But using that, what decision do you make in your product? How do you decide what you're going to do within that product? Okay, so that's great. So what to offer them as a product and a service? So that's great. So that you're figuring out what kind of a product or service will deliver value to my customers. Okay. So, and again, what pain points are they facing are still data point that you would get from a persona. But again, what would you do with that data? Awesome. So Praveen basically says what functionality to create, right? So you're also saying what the users want. So this is a really cool thing, right? So one, you're deciding what the functionality is. You're also deciding the strategy. Okay, what is the strategy of my product? Should I even invest like $500,000 into developing a certain product? Okay. Then the next one is, how do I help them achieve their goals and needs? So again, it kind of goes back to like the intersection between persona to making a decision. But really the focus is like, again, what are people's perceptions about the amount of effort they're putting? Therefore, how difficult or easy or how much effort are people willing to put into a product? And therefore, how easy or difficult should your product be? So it's helping you define your success and failure metrics of your product. That's really important, because if you're saying, yeah, you're designing an in-car dashboard. Okay. The clear thing is, yeah, if you're doing the in-car dashboard, and it is designed for drivers, well, the persona of a driver, I mean, especially when you look at the context in the driver, the persona of a driver is probably like, they're probably very distracted. They've got 10 different signals coming at them. So you want to make sure that you're not distracting them, right? So there are those kinds of strategies that you would have. Or you might say like, listen, I'm going to check my, I have a financial account versus I am checking my email, right? So there's different expectations of security. So in one, I want it to be absolutely secure. In the other one, my level of security might be a little bit lower, right? Again, these are different expectations. There are also expectations of what people would expect to put into the product. So let us say if I use the product and it's running my whole life, okay, there is a certain value to it. There is a certain amount of effort and energy I'm willing to put into it to understand and learn that product. Whereas in some other cases, I may not be willing to put that, because if I'm using Google versus Bing or whatever, it's just a simple matter of going to the URL and typing in a new URL. There is no cost of switching. So again, there are a lot of these kinds of decisions that you are trying to make based on, the persona of the individual and the context in which they're going to use your product. And you're trying to decide, okay, so what are the metrics that are going to define whether my product is going to be successful or not? What are the features that I'm going to have? And most importantly, what is the strategy that I need to have? So which of these customers should I approach and how should I talk to them? And then, how do I convert my customers, right? So these are the larger questions that come in when you're looking at a persona. Okay. So let's go on to the next slide. Right. So when you think about Zomato, right, the questions that you're looking at is what kind of people go out to eat? What do they look for? Now imagine if you were the designer for Zomato, right? These are the two key questions that you would think about, right? So let's go on to the next slide. Right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do an example in the next coming few slides where we talk about how we kind of break down your customers. Okay. The first thing that a persona does is basically even before you get into a persona, you're looking at the different kinds of people that come in. All right. So here you're kind of looking at, all right, so the first kind of group of people might be just friends. They're coming in where they get the best food at affordable prices, right? That's where your college friends, everybody's together, you're hanging out. That's one group of people, right? The second group of people might be a couple, right? Where people are looking for some kind of a intimate kind of a conversation or have an ambiance where they would create memories, right? So that's the idea is, you have a couple coming in and kind of, want to dine out, right? Now, the third one might be a corporate mindset, right? And again, a corporate group is larger. They're basically looking to come in and, dine. For them, they have different priorities, right? Now, can somebody tell me, right, knowing that you have these three different groups, what are the needs and what are the behaviors that each of these three different groups would exhibit? So feel free to type it in or even unmute yourself. We have a fairly small group, so I don't know if you're able to unmute yourself. The only thing is when you're done speaking, just mute yourself back. But yeah, you could just unmute yourself and talk as well.
Basically, quality of food and ambience. These are the main things which I can see from this.
Okay, so let's actually think about this, right? So you're saying people would care about quality of food and ambience. Okay, so which of these three groups of people will care more about ambience?
Maybe couple, basically, or
Okay.
couple and
Then
corporate rather.
Okay, so couple and corporate would care about ambience.
Ambience,
okay.
yeah.
Even
And
with
then the
friends
friends.
also. Even with friends also, they will also look for good ambience because they
But generally when we go out with friends, we are more concerned about friends discussion or time pass kind of. We generally don't look at the ambience all the times, basically.
Yeah, I think in terms of friends, we just want to cut loose and not be judged by our peers.
because whenever I'm going to
Unwind,
celebrate
yeah.
my birthdays, so I certainly look for a good ambience.
Okay,
Because I have
so
to
let's
take
actually think about that, right? So what is the definition of ambience? What I'm hearing is there is possibly the way friends would define ambience would not be the same as the way a corporate would define ambience, is not be the same that a couple would define ambience.
yes.
Yes,
Right?
yes.
So how do these three groups differ in the way they define the term ambience? Because again, this is what is interesting. When you look at a persona, they'll just say cares about ambience. But if you're not able to separate out the meaning of that word ambience for the three groups, then we don't really have a product for all three. Go ahead.
Like if we go with friends, we basically don't care whether there is a AC or not. I mean, air condition or not. But with couple and corporates, we basically look at those things, whether there is air condition or like whether there is a good big table, good chairs or not. If there couple is there, they might look for corner seats or like sofas or something like that. If we are friends, then we'll basically any chair or tables, we just say that join these tables and just make it big. Kind of ambience I'm talking about.
Right. So what is the difference? So like if you had to put it in words, like as few words as possible, what is the difference between friends, couples, and corporates?
The behavior in the same ambience could change according to the type of persona.
And the age group also differs in that, basically.
So there is a difference.
See, friends, yeah, if we are like at the age of 50, if we are meeting with friends, definitely we will look for good place to sit and all that. If we are like at 20s, any random place will chal jayega, kind of that kinds.
Interesting, right? So when you're younger, you probably have larger friends groups, right? And therefore, and you're also probably less pocket heavy. So you don't have as much money. Right? So for
Even
you,
like there is no
Apia,
experience of work as well. So that also matters in all this,
how
everybody's
does
having a
that matter?
different pose. Everybody's having different position. Like at the age of 50, we have good work experience, and that is also that also changes our behavioral part. Like at 20, we act differently, and at 50 we act differently. And according to lifestyle, that also changes. So that is also one behavioral part.
But
So which of these, let's actually we get to that in a little bit, because there are just so many new thoughts. Let me break it down, right? And again, feel free to jump in and kind of talk about it. But let me just very quickly read the comments, help them achieve their goals and needs. So yeah, so the thought here is, if you are friends, you don't necessarily have a lot of money, right? You don't know whether you are going to, what do you call, you don't really care about an air conditioning and stuff like that, but you do care about having good conversations, right? And generally you tend to be loud, because the group is, the larger the group, the louder you are, right? So you want to be in a place where you feel welcomed. That is the core, and welcomed as a friend, right? So that is one way of looking at it. Whereas if you're looking, let's say, a friend who is like older, like what Pooja was talking about, you have the money, right? Your friends groups are probably smaller because everybody has their own life. So at best, you could probably meet up with like 5 or 6 people at the same time if you want to do it, unless you pre-plan for a year or two ahead of time and you kind of set it up. Your friends groups are smaller, and people expect to kind of sit down and have a conversation. It's generally more of a calm conversation where you're kind of letting back and you're talking about stuff, right? And you don't necessarily care about the restaurant welcoming you as such because you got the money, right? But you care about having a nice environment and making sure that you're being served, right? So that is the core aspect. The other thing that I would realize is, if you don't have any money, but you still want to eat, what do? You're more likely to experiment, right? Younger folks are more likely to experiment. There's a new restaurant here, let's open up, right? Younger friends are more likely to make a decision on a dime. What does that mean? You can just be sitting together and you can just make a decision. Okay, yeah, let's go here, and then everybody goes, right? You may not have had a plan 30 minutes ago. You may not even have thought about going out, but suddenly somebody said, and then 5-10 people raise their hands and everybody goes off, right? Whereas when you're older friends, what do? You have to plan for it. Even if you're sending an email out, you're doing whatever, you're coordinating everybody and you're going, right? So that
Like a
is a friendship.
registration before going, kind of. That also happens.
Yeah, possibly, because you don't want to be standing
Pre-bookings,
and
yeah.
wasting time.
Yeah.
So you want to,
And
you for
one
you,
more
it
thing
is
is,
your time that is
couples
more
and
valuable.
corporates.
Go ahead, Surya.
And one more thing is, couples and corporates usually don't try if they have not tried it before. I mean, friends are ready to try it for first time, but whereas
Right.
couples and corporates, they don't go if they have not experienced the place before, usually. I mean, they are not ready to
Absolutely.
explore as friends. That's what I
Absolutely.
feel about
Absolutely.
them.
But
Yeah, so
not
experimentation is a
everyone.
lot less.
But
Go ahead,
not
Nirupama.
everyone. But not everyone. Kind of
In what
mine.
way?
Yeah, kind of mine. I'll go and experiment any of the places.
Okay. So, but
Yeah, I'm
again, we are
interested.
talking about an aggregate behavior. A persona is, remember, is an aggregate behavior, right?
Yep.
So on average, what do? It's not about individuals. Individual behavior will always be unique,
Okay.
right? So at an aggregate behavior, generally you would say that people who are, if you're a couple, and, you want to go out, you want to kind of get the best experience possible, whatever. So you're kind of going in there. There's a lot less experimentation, and corporates also are the same way. It's like, if I make a bunch of people go sit in paradise, and if you notice, most restaurants, at least in Hyderabad or India, have 2 different dining areas, right? One dining area is more of the bespoke experience where you'll have a waiter come to the table and do all that. There's the other dining area where you're kind of just going in and then, ordering, and then, you kind of, or you order from the table and you get your food. So there's a huge difference between the experience. But rather, I think Surya's point is right, is the level of experimentation is definitely a lot higher amongst friends as opposed to couples and corporates, right? And generally corporates would be, somebody would go and they would recommend the place. So that would also be a possibility where they're kind of, everybody's putting the filter, would my colleagues appreciate this space, right? So yeah, so go ahead, Julius. What were you trying to say?
No, I believe that we don't display the same characteristics of behavior when we are with different people. Like when we are friends, we don't get to spend much time together like we used to before. So whatever
Right.
time we get, we don't care about, where we meet up. Okay, just let's meet up somewhere. We don't fuss about the options, we just want to
Right.
hang out and probably revisit old days and try to reconnect on that level. Shall we go and do the same thing again?
Right.
If I'm taking my wife out, I'm very particular about where I go because I know what she likes and dislikes or what we like in common. So I'm very particular about that. I think about it, okay, I know she likes this. I try to surprise her. It's more of a romantic kind of surprise kind of thing. Corporate, again, it depends on how you gel with everyone. You might have friends in the company, you may not, you may keep it strictly professional. So you tend to be on your best behavior, right?
Right. Right.
If I'm with my friends, I might eat a little more, I might drink a little more, I talk a lot loudly. I won't worry about it. But in a corporate setup where it's highly corporate, I might be on my best behavior. Probably be more of a listener than a talker in that case.
You bring a very fabulous point to the table, right? And I'm gonna just put it out to everyone. What Julius is saying is something very different from what I'm saying, right? I am saying that these three are different personas, but Julius is actually saying, no, they're actually the same person who's going between different personas, right? So that's a very, I mean, for me, it's very interesting because why would you create a persona? Like I always assumed, or at least I would assume that all of you would think that a persona is talking about one individual at a time, right? Or one set of individuals. And that individual cannot transition between different personas. At least that is the fundamental assumption that at least, how many of you had that assumption? I'm just very curious. Saurabh, can you just do a quick poll? If you say that you had the assumption that one person cannot be in different personas, right? So if you say one person can be in different personas, say yes. If one person cannot be in different personas, say no. Okay. There you go. We are creating a poll right now.
But personas are made to relate with the context. I mean, which restaurant or for which we are working for. Accordingly, so for example, like you or me, it can be like आप paradise biryani में भी खा सकते हो, and again you can have Irani chai also, right? So who would go to Irani chai? The persona would be different, but the characteristics while you go, the things which we choose might be a bit slightly variable. But a person can go to paradise and also go for Irani chai also. So the characteristics which they are choosing for the personas are different, but the same person can go to different places because a person carries multiple characteristics. It's not that one characteristic.
But I'm asking specifically in the context of personas, because a lot of you have experience working and you've probably seen this term being thrown around. How many of you realize that a persona can go across different personas, across different situations?
Yes, right? Definitely.
And how many of you have felt that one persona is only, that user has to be in one persona, they cannot move out of there?
It's like a behavior, right? When we are in the group, different groups, behave differently. I'm in a couple with my family is a different behavior. The friends maybe change.
I guess, but everybody does the same thing. If I'm not wrong, everybody does the same thing. If we are with our friends, definitely we will not think about ambience or anything, we'll just be chilled out. If we are going with office colleagues, definitely we have some barriers. So everybody, some or the other way behaves similar. Like in this particular thing I'm talking.
Okay. So let's end the poll. So majority of you felt that, yeah, we all knew that one person can be in multiple personas.
Yes.
Awesome. Now let's go back to the original question that we had. Saurabh, if we can go back in our deck to the original slide where we said which of those two personas is correct.
So not only behavior, some of the things are different, especially the context like a money, economy, the time. These are the variables which will change.
So now look at this. Does this make sense to you? Does this persona make sense to you anymore?
At some point, definitely it does. Like goals or pain points, needs, in those areas, definitely it works.
Right.
But I think it's not granular enough to really understand. I mean, maybe it's a top level view of these individuals, but how much is it enough to make a decision?
Yeah. So one question, if you think about it, is they're not granular enough in some areas, and second, they're too granular in certain other areas. Right. So if you look at Carlos, he's saying, age is 25, right? Occupation is whatever, a student, right? Now, what do you take away from that persona? Right? Okay, you have an ideal person who's working at it, but can you actually tell, like, okay, why this person, how this person will use a certain product, right? Can you tell how this person's behavior changes across, different contexts, right? Can you describe how this person is working within the context of your product? So, for example, in the first one, it says the app has to help people sell, rent, and buy bikes in a local environment, right? That is the goal for Carlos. All right. And so when you're looking at this person's persona, can you make any decisions based on that? Right. So their goal is to want to buy a bike for Nuremberg. So you want to go take the, ride the bike to go to Nuremberg, right? And then you want to rent a bike during trips, right? Moving around on a bike. So not being able to find a cheap and good bike, that is their frustration, right? And lots of scams on Facebook groups and eBay. Okay. So what does that mean? What decision can you make based on what you have seen there on the product?
Like the bikes on rent should be easily locally available.
Okay, so he's not willing to travel.
Yeah, he's not willing to travel. Yes.
He might rent a bike for trips because he might need a better bike for longer trips.
Okay.
I think he wants one bike for himself. Maybe he's not too worried about the quality but I think he's someone who wants to try different experiences in terms of renting bike, going different places. But the only thing.
But if you're going to do long distance riding, there is clearly a need for quality bikes, right? Otherwise, if a bike breaks down in the middle, you're in trouble.
That's why he wants to rent a bike. Perhaps he wants to rent a better bike for longer trips. But that kind of conflicts with buying a bike also. For Nuremberg, I don't think that will also perhaps be a longer trip, right? So.
Okay.
And it seems like this is the context is for a local environment, but it seems like he wants a bike for more than just local environment also. Rent or buy a bike.
Yeah, but for that he doesn't want to go far away.
Yeah, he can rent a bike and he can roam around in the city.
Right. So what is the final decision? So I know that some other people are commenting. So while you guys are thinking, let's see. So Ishika says, this is how I used to make personas till now. This is how we actually were taught how to make personas. Yeah, good. I'm glad you're part of the workshop, Ishika. So we can, by the time you're done, you will actually have a different perspective. Okay. Anup says to find authentic deals. Yeah, absolutely. This guy is looking for authentic deals because one of the frustrations is there are lots of scams in Facebook groups and eBay, right? As far as I know, personas are made to understand who would be the customer of the product. So through this, though this user can have multiple characteristics, so is the reason a user is a customer for multiple companies. So that is true. But again, going back to our original conversation, as you start looking at designing a product, even for the case of Zomato, what was really interesting was the realization that you would transition into different use cases or different kinds of persona mindset as your needs change or as your context changes, right? So the question that I have here is, are you able to tell what the context changes here are, right? Or are you simply looking at one individual context? Because even here, like, at one level is saying, okay, he wants to do long distance riding, but somewhere, we also, you guys also talked about he wants to ride locally.
Yeah, he might need a lower powered bike for local travel.
But where does it say local? Where does it say that this person is basically
it doesn't
trying
say
to
that.
use local?
Yeah, it doesn't say
Right.
that.
So again, there is that context switch that is not being documented here. So somehow you cannot tell what is the different context that this person goes through, so you can serve the individual over time, right? So yeah, so I hope that answers your question, Shiva, or Surya. I hope that answers your question, Surya. Validation for the service of bike they're renting. So I don't understand. So can you explain it, Pavitra? Praveen?
I mean by that, like when you are renting a bike, if you are renting from a people at the point, and they tell you all those things are very much okay in the bike, but when you are renting online, everything is documented there. That this is the correct functionality for this engine and this thing, and everything happens on the tape. If something breaks down, then you can say this was not correctly being serviced, or otherwise it's the person's it's being the person's responsibility that you broke it when you're taking it. Sometimes that conversation also happens with the local bikes that are around there, and they don't provide exact knowledge of the bike or something like that.
Okay.
But when it is in the application, there all these things are documented. So if the something is breaking, so both of them can make an argument that you need to pay for it or something like that.
Okay. So I think what you're trying to say is there are limitations that every individual has. Is that right?
Yeah.
Right. So if I was to look at this, Carlos, do you know what this person's limitations are? What this person's non-negotiables are? So
Maybe money
constraint. Very vaguely, not
does it say money constraint anywhere?
No.
No, I am just saying it could be,
Yeah.
it is not mentioned here, but it could be the reason.
Yeah, possibly, right? Because I mean, we are assuming that this person doesn't have the money, so they want to rent a higher end bike, right? It could also be that, this person has no money constraint, but doesn't have space in their garage. Possibly, right?
Because he's a student.
So what are the constraints? Sorry?
No, since he's a student, he might be renting. It might not have enough space to park those number of bikes. So he might want to rent it like that. Is that what you're saying?
So I think, sorry. So it mentions that like I really need to buy a bike if I want to save money to travel, because the public transport is very expensive. That clearly reflects that this person wants to save the money. I mean, whether he has the money or not, but he wants to save the money. So,
So money is just one example, right? Do you know of other constraints that this person is operating under, right? There's time, effort, money, right? There's probably scheduling. So there's n number of, constraints that you have to think about as you're going into the bike rental space, right? It could also be expertise. I do not have the expertise of maintaining a bike, right? So the point being is there has to be some way that you can actually say what are the limitations that somebody is working under, right? Because if you want to define a feature, you say, okay, so if expertise is a constraint, then you can say, well, we can bring your bike and we'll maintain for you, right? Or if you give your bike for rental, we will maintain the bike for you. There's a different perspective in that, right? So again, these are opportunities where you have to start thinking about how does the individual transition between different contexts. And the second thing is, what are the limitations that they're playing under, right? And also, what are their aspirational statements, right? So what are their aspirations, either in terms of renting a bike or, in terms of renting something else as well, right? What are their motivations and aspirations? Because here it is way too focused on that one specific thing of biking, right? So you do not understand if there are larger opportunities available or not, right? So go ahead, Madhu.
Yeah, Prasad. Actually, I want to share this. Like, for example, if in my company something like ask for prepare any kind of something like if you give some goals, something like helping people to sell that. So normally we should not we are going to the user and without asking them, we understand something like he might go buying he might buying a bike for number, something like renting a bike. So normally we'll do same things like so see other places and doing things. Yeah, that is the maybe without thinking we are doing the stuff like what exactly their requirements, and normally we understand that what exactly he needs. So assumptions we made these kind of things, and that's what I'm saying.
So this is a very interesting thing, right? So this is what is called a confirmation bias.
Yeah.
A confirmation bias is whatever you're going through in your life, you're assuming that the other person is going through the same thing, right? So a confirmation bias, again, keep in mind that the person who generates the persona is not the same person as the person who uses the persona, right? Especially in a multidisciplinary team. And so if you basically create a persona and you're handing it off to your designers may not even think to ask you, why was this? What was the clarification, right? They might just look at it and they might just execute. And so a good persona is designed in such a way that confirmation biases do not change the interpretation, right? So based on who's reading it, you do not interpret the persona differently, right? And so when you are basically sharing a persona with your designers should not assume, okay, mere zindagi mein aisa ho raha hai. When I was a student, like say, oh, this person is a student. So when I was a student, it used to be like this. Therefore, now if somebody was a billionaire and they were a student at a university and you give them the same persona, this persona will mean something completely different, right? So that is one thing that you need to basically also avoid in a persona. It needs to be a standalone document, right? Now we'll keep coming back to this. Let's keep moving forward, Saurabh. So Pooja, you had a comment or anything else you wanted to add?
Yeah, there was a point that for example, if I want to buy a bike, but still I don't know anything about it, and even if I don't have any expertise, I might rent few bikes and go on ride and check the experience of every bike, and then I can choose whatever I want to buy. So if we if we take out the money constraint, we can have this kind of assumptions as well, I feel.
Correct. Exactly. And so the challenge that you see is like, there's many different contexts. And again, you need to start thinking through all those different variables as you start coming through. And the persona in itself is not able to communicate that to you, right? And it's also encouraging you to make assumptions, which are unsaid assumptions. And unsaid assumptions are more dangerous than spoken assumptions. Because unsaid assumptions, nobody's documented it. Nobody knows why you designed it that way. And finally, when the product goes out and you realize you may have hit or missed the target or whatever, now you don't know what assumption caused what failure, right? The team will basically say this is the whole project failed, right? And that may be the completely wrong perspective when you're looking at the product, right? So let's keep going forward. Right? So this is where I think the concept is that different people or the same individual might have different personas based on the context that they're working in. That's a really good point, right? Then the second aspect that you also need to understand is the transition between personas, right? When somebody is transitioning, say between, I want to go to a high-end restaurant to I'm okay to go to the neighborhood cafe to drink a cup of tea with my friend, there's a transition between those, right? So it is to understand when somebody transitions between one persona to the other persona, what are the decisions and what are the constraints that I'm operating under when I will switch from one to the other, right? So for example, if I say, yeah, if I'm meeting with a friend who's a really old friend and I really don't have the time, then I will actually transition to a local cafe. I will not think about the quality. I just want to spend time with that individual, right? So you understand what the constraints are that are kicking the transition between different personas. Okay. So that would be something that would be interesting in there, right? Now, the next thing that you are also looking at is between these different personas, friends, couples, and corporates. What is also important is to understand what are the differences between these guys, right? What are the similarities between these guys? Because again, when you create a product, you're not creating 3 different Zomato dine out experiences, right? At the end of the day, you're still creating one product. So what you really have to understand is from the persona is what is same and what is different, so that you can kind of start building out the experience, that one single experience. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. Right. So the decisions that you have to make as a designer is, one, balance the requirements of the different personas. Right. And this is interesting. So that was one other mistake in the previous example, right? In both of those cases, what people did was they just simply gave one persona, right? And this is, I mean, I go look up as many UX portfolios as you can, and you will realize a majority of the portfolios will come with a single persona, right? And right there is a reason why I would directly reject them, right? Because if you come in with a single persona, how are you even like designing a product for multiple people? I mean, you have no idea about the complexity of the product, right? And so that is something that I need to understand when I'm looking at the persona is, okay, I have different personas in the real world, right? Which might be very shades of gray. They may overlap. They may be separate in some cases, but I'm trying to understand what is the persona and how do I balance the needs of all of them? Because at the end of the day, I still need to create one product. Right? So that is one big decision that I as a product designer have to make, right? Then the next decision I have to make is what are the unique features for every persona? Because if I have to satisfy 4 people, what are the unique features that I have to do for each one of them, right? And then I'm also making a decision in terms of what are the similarities, right? So what is the difference between unique, similar, and balance? They all look very, unique and similar, I can tell, but what is the difference between balance? Like, what does balance mean? Can anybody tell me that? Every word has a meaning here, by the way, if you haven't figured it out. So can anybody tell me what I mean by the term balance?
It should be balanced for different kind of persons.
Okay, but how do I balance it? Because I know the unique features, I know the similar features.
Yeah.
Now, what do I do in a balance?
Data should be balanced, same.
So how do I balance it?
See, one person is looking for one feature, means the same feature is looking for other person also. So we are balancing the same with the different kind of persons.
Is it the motivation?
Okay, so let me give a more concrete example. Okay. I am creating an HR application, an HR software. Okay. Now, what I'm trying to do in the HR software is I have 2 users. One user is a manager. The other person is a HR person. Okay. So manager ka goal ye hai ki they want to basically look at who is on leave. Okay. And then how many people are on leave? That is their first highest priority because they're probably managing, let us say, about 20 people. Okay. So I don't want to see every individual. I want to see all the people, how many people are on leave. Okay. And I want to basically then apply that, and then I want to see which of the people are on leave. That is my goal, right? The HR person's goal is to manage on a day-to-day basis. Okay, how many people are not coming in? How many people are coming in? So that is, I need to match up my attendance, right? And my secondary goal is I need to make monthly reports. Okay. So even though both of them have similar goals, okay, if you look at the larger picture, both of them need reporting at the same levels. but their order of requirement is very different. So how do I balance them?
It's essentially the same dashboard, but with different filters that they have to use, or it's also based on the roles that they have a particular view to a.
So as a role, as your role changes, you might have different needs for information, right?
Yeah.
You have different action items for you, right? The manager is probably just looking at, okay, the manager is probably interested in looking at, okay, what is my staffing rate right now? Where do I have to go? And 2 months down the line, I have a deliverable. Are we going to be able to hit our deliverable or not?
Okay, so depending on the role, they should be able, I think that's the...
Yeah, I mean, different people will have different requirements. So whereas you see the HR person, they're making sure that the operations are running smoothly, everybody's in attendance, there's no individual problems. If there's any issues, they need to be able to jump in and solve it immediately. So there are different requirements.
The look and feel of the application should be similar for both. But that requirement changes. Requirement changes. The user logs in as a manager. He'll see the dashboard, but he'll feel that this is the same kind of look and feel is existing for other person as well. Whenever a HR logs in.
So are you telling me that you're going to create?
Changing. Pardon?
Yeah, but now are you saying that the content is same again? So only difference is for a manager.
That is the design
first and option 1 second, right? So the options are turned around. Both of them want the same information, but the options are, the priority is different.
Yeah, but manager are going to see the dashboard of the people, no? The same is not for replicating for the HR. So that differs. That differs. Requirement.
No, the HR has to do reports. He has to do monthly reports. So he also has to look at dashboard of people.
I guess manager will see just the results and HR will do the detailed work.
I think the intersection is...
So here's, let me state it again, right? The manager wants to see the dashboard, right? The overview of it. And then they will deep dive into individual people, right?
Yes.
The HR person wants to see individual people first and then go to the overview once a month because they have to generate the reports, right?
Yes,
so both of them are looking at the same 2 screens or the same 2 modules, right? But you have to create the screen, right? So how would you create the screen?
I think
we can differentiate the sections, no? But dashboard as a one section and some other requirements as another section, kind of thing we can differentiate.
Of course, you will differentiate. You will have 2 modules anyway, so automatically you're differentiating. But the point is the need of information is different at different times. So if you want to make a comment, just raise your hand so I know and I can just call you on. So that might be easier because I know some of you want to speak and then you kind of get talked over. But yeah, go ahead, Julius.
Yeah, I think the common denominator here is people. So I think both of them will have to look at the data that is relating to employees, and it depends on the features that we give them to generate a report, right? So like, let's say HR needs to look at that data. They'll have to drill down into each individual employee. But at the end of the day, they will have to have a feature that they can automatically generate reports. So they would click on a particular button that says generate report.
Right, but you only have certain amount of real estate. You have a fixed amount of real estate. You have 2 modules, right? How do you divide the real estate between the 2 modules? That is the question, right? So what I'm trying to say here is planning unique features allows you to decide how many modules you're going to create, right? Planning similar features allows you to decide how many modules you can merge and optimize, right? But once you've figured out, I need 4 modules, you still need to plan how you're going to put them on the real estate. Which of the modules will go on the left side, which will be small, narrow, which of them will be on the right-hand side, which will be big, right? How are you going to break your real estate down? You know, and that is where the balancing challenge comes. Right. Okay. So the answer here is unique features and similar features allow you to define the number of modules you have, but the balancing allows you to say, how am I going to fit all those modules into the limited space that I have? Okay. Those are the 3 decisions that you as a designer have to make. So go ahead, Ganu, you have a comment?
Yeah, the same thing, you know, everything on the screen, but now we distribute, right? The proportionately, the priority wise we distribute, that is the time.
Right. So exactly. So somewhere you have to prioritize. You have to define the proportionality. And only when you do that are you able to then put the stuff up there. Okay. Go ahead, Pooja.
And generally showing the unique features, highlighting the unique features, and then similar features can be, little, and that way we can balance so that people will understand that yes, we are providing with unique features. So more attention goes towards that. And similar features generally we all know, so we know how to operate all these things, kind of.
So I have a question, right? So have you ever seen the cockpit of an aircraft? You just check it up, do a Google search and see, right?
Yeah.
They have hundreds of knobs, hundreds of switches, levers, all that stuff. Any one of those levers in the wrong setting could kill you.
Yes.
Okay.
Sure.
But everything is unique. I'm highlighting everything unique.
But it depends on the drive where they want to go and how they want to go, and it's if it is pre-decided,
so at the end of the
then
day,
yeah.
Right. So at the end of the day, uniqueness is not as important, right? It is the task that the person is trying to achieve that is important, right? If your information that you're presenting is relevant to the task that you're trying to do, that is where the value is. So again, if you're looking at a manager and you're saying, I'm a manager, I'm first interested in the higher order report, and then I want to drill down into the deeper things. And then you have the HR guy who says, I want to drill down into people first, and then I want to look at the higher order report second, right? Now, which module will you put front? So the simplest answer is, oh, okay, I'm just going to have two different UIs, right? So technically, based on the login, I will create two different modules. But my argument is, you are creating two different code bases, right? As a designer, you have created two different code bases that is actually stopping your product from evolving fast in the future. It will kill your product in the future, right? So one of the core goals of any designer is to minimize the number of pages, minimize the number of code bases. So you cannot actually say, the answer cannot be that I'm going to create different screens, right? Your answer has to be the same screen and prioritize
Yes, we have to prioritize
as much as possible, and only when it is unavoidable is when you get multiple screens. Right? And there's this. How many of you have heard of MySpace? Just say yes if you've heard of the company MySpace. Yeah. So yeah, a couple of you have heard of. MySpace used to be bigger than Facebook when Facebook was formed. Right. The reason MySpace died was that when Facebook was formed, what MySpace did was they had so much code base, they had so much code and so much like people kind of so many pages that just to maintain it, they needed a large number of people, right? What Facebook did started off from an optimized place, everything was optimized, and then it was able to do more with this fewer number of engineers. They were much more nimbler, right? Same thing between Yahoo and Google, right? Yahoo had purchased 5 of the biggest search engines and purchased them and brought them in, right? So they had 5 code bases, all working separately, right? Whereas Google had just one search engine, one code base, everything was unified, right? So Yahoo needed to have more people just maintaining. So it was more expensive just to maintain the product than it was for Google to innovate, right? So a lot of this comes down to the designer. So from a designer's perspective, you have to be optimizing at all points in time, right? You're not optimizing for today, you're optimizing for tomorrow when your product is super successful and scalable, right? So this is where it comes down to. So coming back, 3 decisions. Anybody else have any other comments before I go on to the next slide?
Prasad, just wanted to ask you something. I don't know if it's a question or probably something I need. So basically we understand the priorities of the manager, project manager, and we understand the priorities of the HR manager, and we see where they intersect, and that we take out the top priorities to give them a unified design. Is that make sense or no? Okay.
So you're talking like a UI UX designer, right? And the reason is being the product manager doesn't know crap.
Okay.
Right.
And in the sense that he just wants to execute a report. Let's say he just wants to review or execute.
Okay. So I take my comment back. I misunderstood what you said. I take it back. Okay. So I will restart the answer. It still is not the right way because of this. Okay. What you need to understand is which of your customers are more likely to use the product on a regular basis, right? So is your HR guy going to log in more frequently, or is your manager going to log in more frequently?
Probably the HR guy on daily basis.
The HR guys. So you have to skew it to the larger audience.
Oh, okay. Got it.
Right?
Okay.
But that is, there are many strategies. So in this specific story, I'm saying you skew it to the larger audience.
Okay.
Right? But in different scenarios, you'll have to make different trade-offs. But again, the trade-off is a different skill altogether, right? So in this case, and that's what it is, it's weird. The more you know, the more you say it depends. You cannot say yes or no, right? And so you have to give me the context and I can tell you what it is. The larger picture is you're balancing based on some criteria and there is some logical reasoning behind that, then that's how you balance it. Okay. But you need to know the unique features, you need to know the similar features. All right. Let's go on to the next slide. Okay. So here's the question. Okay. So this going back to, there are two kinds of personas, and this is something that very few people know and understand. Okay. There are two kinds of personas you can make. Okay. The first kind of persona that you can make is a demographic persona, right? And the second kind of persona you can make is a behavioral persona. Okay. The demographic persona basically looks at the background of the individual. Okay. Your say friends are between 16 to 35, single, commercial, location type. They will look for commercial location type. You know, they're looking for students or whatever. So, you know, the occupation as a student, this is how much they earn. These are the devices. So this is pretty much a demographic. And what you realize in all the personas that we do, we mix all of these and do make a khichdi, right? And khichdi nahi banane ka, right? Keep it simple. So demographic is primarily focusing on things that are about the average individual, that are immutable. They don't change, right? And these are things. So whereas behavioral, you start to think about the needs, right? What do people think, feel, say, do in different contexts? Okay. So behavioral focuses on the behavior, whereas demographic focuses on who they are and behavior focuses on what they do. Okay. Everybody get this concept?
It may be behavioral, qualitative kind of is a behavioral, we can say. Demographic is a quantity, can say.
No.
No.
So both personas have to be validated at a quantitative level.
Okay.
Right. So because a persona, again, think about it as if you are making $1 million decision based on some document, you better be sure that document is correct.
Right.
Right. So both of them have to have that large sample size and that validation. Otherwise, your persona is calling for wrong decisions.
No, I made like, you know, when I see this, given the two information, right, it's talking about, you know, the qualitative kind of the think, feel, say, these are stuff asking individual thing, inquiry. But the rather demographic side, it's asking, you know, what the devices, age group, you know, such as sections I'm seeing. That's why.
Right. So, yeah. So I think the point is it is qualitative data that has been quantitatively validated. Does that make sense, Kanu?
Could you elaborate? Yeah.
So it is qualitative data that you have validated using large-scale quantitative studies.
Okay.
Right. So that is the thing. So you still have to quantitatively evaluate it. So even if people say, I want to have fun with my friends, you have to make sure that a large enough sample size of your market will say the same thing. Okay.
Yeah.
Makes sense? I see a question mark. That's why.
No, it's my name.
Okay. No. I see a question mark in your face. That's why I'm trying to make sure that you're clear.
Yeah. I got it. Thanks.
Good. Okay. Julius, go ahead.
Sorry? No. No, actually, I was thinking in terms of behavioral. As I was saying, like the transition part. Let's say in my age group right now, we take more time to find the right place, but we are excited to have fun at the same time. So it's like we take our time to figure out the right deal package. Somewhere we'll have ambience with our friends to be alone and stuff like that. So I mean, it's kind of I mean, the behavioral is okay. I mean, I understand that, but I just felt that it keeps moving here and there and transitioning depending on.
Absolutely, and that's where you have to understand the transitions.
Yeah.
Okay, so you know, your comment is valid. Okay, so going back to what Pooja basically says, Pooja saying, can I clarify, right? So the question is, dekho, now you have to create a Zomato dine out product. Okay, now I'm giving you two kinds of personas. One is a demographic persona, which is who is the person who is your customer, versus a behavioral persona, which is saying, what does your customer do? Okay, which of these two will you find most valuable for designing your product, for designing the dine out product? Okay, do we have a poll for this, Saurabh?
Yep.
Go ahead. So which of these two will you rely on? All right, we need 20 more people to kind of give in their feedback. Awesome. So majority of you said behavioral. Okay, great. So
I have a doubt.
Yeah, go ahead, Pooja.
Because I gave demographic as an answer. I felt that demographic will not change, but behavioral aspects will keep changing. So I thought demographic will have a fixed kind of data which won't change much. So am I right or
in a
wrong?
demographic data, you have no idea why your people behave the way they do, right?
Yeah.
You have no idea what they need, what they feel, right? You have no idea about it.
Yeah, but the question was basically on which part we will depend upon kind of. So I thought that demographic will give exact, definitely it will not give us behavioral aspect, but at least we will know the main aspect which will not change periodically.
True. But what will you do with that data? So if your goal is to design a dining out page for Zomato, what will you do with that data? How will you interpret it?
Like we can, that's what coming in my mind. Like they according to the ambience part, according to the menu part, it will help us decide on those aspects. Not every aspect, but we can have these.
But how will you know what ambience to give for friends?
Again, this is again an assumption, like bias kind of thing that comes in. Yeah.
Exactly. So when you look at demographic, it's too much bias.
Yeah. Right.
You know?
Right.
So here's an interesting challenge. So Nirupama, you had a question, or were you just applauding us?
No. I have a question, Prasad.
Okay.
See, if I am considering only behavioral means I have voted for demographic only. It means if I am considering only behavioral means I don't know which group and which person behavior is that one. So based on that, I targeted demographic because demographic is giving some idea. So these
right.
Yeah, this age group is targeting for Zomato. So
Exactly.
behavioral, what it is saying, it's open right now. So some kind of behaviors are there, but to whom this kind of behavior is targeting to? That that part is missing here.
So, but my question is,
again, the assumptions also comes under behavior, right? We also assume.
So, but again, under behavioral, why do you care about giving a label? Why do you, even if you didn't know that somebody was 16 to 35 and just look at the behavioral data, would you be able to make some decisions on that individual? Would you be able to make product decisions?
No.
No.
I think no.
But both are important, I'm considering. Behavior and
you are
demographic.
on target, Nirupama.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right.
Both
So
are
for
very
those
much
of you
important.
that haven't realized it, I deliberately give wrong information.
Actually, by giving
because I make you think.
option itself, I'm just checking for both.
Yeah, I also checked for both, but there was no
Only
both options.
demographic
So
and behavioral. Yeah.
That's awesome. So the correct answer is both.
Both.
It is not one or the other.
Yeah.
Right. But there are different decisions that you can make with both.
Yes.
Okay. So the demographic decisions help you decide on strategic product decisions. Okay. So is that on our next slide, Saurabh, or is it towards the end? Yeah. So here's the key takeaway, right? Demographic personas help you make strategic decisions. Okay. So is this market big enough for me to go into, right? Will I be able to make enough revenue? Because if I'm going after a student market and I'm saying, okay, now, the key is value, right? How do I deliver value? Okay. If it is value, then restaurants will not pay me enough money, right? And so you have to understand that it is high volume, low margin, right? Whereas if I was going after the professionals or whatever, it's probably lower volume, high margin, right? So these are things that I would have to think about from a demographic persona perspective. These are decisions I would be able to make, right? And you're able to understand who the customer is and what their background is. So that is the data that it's helping you understand key user characteristics that will do the strategic direction of your product, right? Whereas when you look at behavioral personas, it helps you make a lot of tactical decisions, right? Decisions that are happening on the moment, right? So how do you evaluate at this point, how something works or not, right? Whether somebody needs a certain feature or not, whether, they will use a certain feature, how frequently will your users use a certain feature, okay? The other thing that is missing, by the way, in both of these, right, which is what my conversation, Julius, was about, was if you go back, right? One key thing that was missing here was which persona is actually more frequent, right? What is the value for each persona? So ideally, if you know that I'm able to send 5,000 to 15,000 per month, right? So they're free, assuming that 10% of their salary, right? So this is, is about 5,000 to 15,000. Well, let's assume it's about half of that. It's about $7,500, right? Then you need to understand what is how many people are there in each of those personas that you can reach out to, right? So if you say friends group are probably, let us say it's about 20%, couple are like 30%, corporate groups are 90%, let us say, or whatever. So add it up to 100%, but you give a certain number, you will take that number and you'll multiply it with the earning per spend, and therefore you will prioritize which of those guys are more valuable to you economically. So that is the one data point that is missing, that you need to prioritize. Cool. Let's go to the next one. So everybody now understand the difference between demographic personas and behavioral personas?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So now let's go back to the original two ones. What do you guys think about it now? What type of personas are these? Are these demographic or behavioral?
It's a combination.
Combination of
both.
Combination of both, yes.
But it's not detailed.
Correct. So now you start realizing where they're going wrong, isn't it? So if you do a persona like this, you start realizing, okay, they didn't necessarily understand. So both of them are kind of trying to do both, but they're not really nailing everything down, right? So now if you want to make your decisions, either you have to guess. So there's a bias that comes in as to what the intent and the motivation of that individual is, or it is, when you look at the other stuff, it is not relevant, right? So for example, in Anjali's case, Anjali, and these are real life, portfolios that we've received around the world for ourselves, right? And one person was, I think, applying out of Germany. The other person, I think it was someplace else, right? But when we receive these applications and we literally look at these, it kind of helps understand, okay, what decision am I going to make? Does the designer know what decisions they need to make? So just by looking at the persona, it tells me that the designer has no clue what design decisions that they're going to make. Right? Everybody agreed on that?
Yes.
Cool. So after this session, never ever do something like this. Anybody? Okay. So if you agree, just say yes. So I know you get the concept, and then we can keep going.
Yes.
So type kar do. So yeah. Excellent. Go ahead, Ishika.
Can you hear me, sir?
Yes. I can't see you though.
Yeah, sir, actually, I was outside right now and I'm drenched in rain.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So, sir, while making personas, do we need to make demographic separately and behavioral separately, or can we make both in one but detailed?
This is such a awesome question, right? So because this is when you do your personas, what do you first do, right? Do you do the first demographic, and then do you do the behavioral, or do you do the behavioral first and then do you do the demographic? Anybody? So just type it in, whatever. So demographic first and behavioral, or behavioral first or demographic. So just type it in, whichever one you think we should do first.
I just want, it's kind of tricky in the sense that, for example, my brother and his daughter, they got their first tattoos together, right? So he is 50, he's what now, 52. His daughter is 21. So for them, it's the first time, and she's gone on to get more tattoos. But for him to get that first tattoo, it has taken him till the age of 52. I've got a couple of tattoos, but he's never taken the next step. Like, okay, I'll go get a tattoo. Then finally he decides to, but that again, that's different demographic. And if like he's spending the money for his daughter to get my niece to get a tattoo, right? So if I had gone to my father and said, I got my tattoos after I started making my own money. So if I had gone to my father at that age and asked, I want to get a tattoo, I would have got a very dirty look. So I think the demographics and behavior will continue to shift. So it's kind of difficult what to start off with. Like, for example, 5 years.
Again,
yeah,
you can't do parallelly. You cannot do parallelly.
Okay.
Right? You have to start somewhere. Okay. Knowing that behavior is a constantly shifting goalpost, and demographic in some ways is a shifting goalpost, but it's a relatively slow goalpost, right? So in a sense, like, we all grew up without computers, right? So I saw my first computer when I came to the, let's say, 8th grade, right? Before that, I had no idea of a computer, right? So that's great. So, but then the new demographic has shifted. But the point being is, the demographics also shift to a certain extent, because I have learned new technologies over a period of time and stuff like that. And so I have also grown. But the point is, the rate of growth and the rate of adoption of new technologies and the rate of behaviors, differentials, are always going to be there between different age groups, right? But let me ask you a question. Who decides that a demographic goes between 18 to 25? How do you decide what the cutoff is between these different demographics?
I think it starts from when you are considered an adult. When you are a teenager, I mean, I'm
I
just
guess
saying.
it depends on society norms, basically, maybe.
So are you going to define your product based on society, social
No.
norms?
We are saying, as you are asking, that who decides this. So generally, this is like coming for so many years like this. So maybe this might happen, kind of, I'm saying.
No.
Maybe.
When you're designing a product, you have nothing to do with social norms, right? Because you're designing a product in terms of your user basis. You know? So for example, in the US, drinking age is 21. Right? In India, I believe it is 18. It's kind of indeterminate. You can drink at any age, but it's 18 minimum. Right? So different countries have different standards for the same thing, different social standards. Right? So that is specifically for, those are legally mandated demographics. Right? You cannot use a legally mandated demographic for, or a socially mandated demographic for defining your product. Okay? Because somebody who's the age 25 or even age 30 might be closer to somebody behaviorally at age 18 than say somebody with 16, right? So your demographic for your product might be very different from a social and legal standpoint. Okay. So how do you define when you're going to draw the line? Okay, at 26, you suddenly become part of a new demographic. How do you decide that?
I think it's how we progress from being in school, like from a teenager to college, and we start working and
But again, those are social perceptions. Those are social perceptions.
Can I ask something here, Prasad? Our users are anyways driven by society. So how can we just differentiate society norms and users?
See, let me ask a slightly different question, right? In the US, you are allowed to join the army at the age of 18.
We cannot vote, I think.
But you can vote at the age of 18, but you cannot drink till you're 21.
Yeah.
So you're saying that you can you can do life and death decisions for other people, and you can define the destiny of your country by voting, but you cannot drink because you are not mature enough.
I got it. I got the point. I'm asking you. Then we have these the question which you're asking. We have these thin lines that at the age of 25, who is deciding 18 to 25? So I thought that might be the reason. So the society has set few norms for ages. So might be the reason. That is what I'm saying.
No, that is not the reason, right? So because the thing is, based on the product that you have, different people at different age groups may react differently, right?
Okay.
So for example, let's take YouTube. Right?
I was just about to say TikTok. Yeah, right.
TikTok,
right?
So the demographics fall even below, like, you're talking 18 onwards, 0 to 18, right? But YouTube, my daughter now knows how to play YouTube, how to watch a specific video. She knows how to speak into the microphone, right? So there's clearly a demographic for her where she doesn't, she needs to be protected from offensive content, and she's only allowed to get certain kinds of content, right? And so there is a demographic for her, right? So, but YouTube in social norms, there is no demographic, right? It depends on the product that you're making that you have to define your demographic, right? So the answer to what I'm trying to say is, a lot of the times your demographic is defined by the behavior that you notice, right? So if you have a lot of money, infinite amount, you will basically break people into 5-year groups, okay? And then you will basically try to build demographics for every 5-year bracket, right? And generally you will start from some kind of a socially defined demographic. So socially defined demographic is 18 to 25, 25 to 35, whatever. There's a socially defined demographic where there's a lot of social research that is there that says there are significant differences between these age groups.
Can I just break one for one second?
Go ahead.
Yeah. So what are we trying to say that Demographic is also like one aspect is monetary behavior, kind of.
It is
Are we
monetary.
talking
It is
about?
also, see, think about like at the age of 25, like what's the average age of marriage, right? So there are specific life events that happen in people's lives, right? So people on average get married at 25, let us say, right? On average, people get, have their first child at say about 30, right? On average, people will, have moved on to their second job by the time they're 28. Right? So these are key milestones in people's lives, right? So when you look at those key milestones in people's lives, each of those milestones gives you different, changes the scenario, the situation in which you're working in, right? So the moment you're married, your circumstances have changed. The moment you got your first job, your circumstances have changed, right? So generally, what some of these social research studies do, this is, I'm not talking social demographics, but there's social research. There's a lot of social research. And a lot of these social research studies do is they try to identify these different milestones. And basically using these milestones, they basically try to say, generally up to this age, you will have one kind of demographic. Up to this age, you will have another kind of demographic. That's what social research defines it as. Got it?
That's what. Now, so we are depending on social research.
Yeah. So there is some social research that is there, but you have to be able to explain that. Okay. If somebody asks you. So now once you have that social research in place, when you are building your demographic and you say you have infinite amount of resources to kind of build a build a persona, what you will do is you will take each of these social communities and you will each of these demographics, and then you will start doing research into them. Right? Now that really works in a very well-planned, idealistic manner. In a practical environment, the problem is very different. In the practical environment, what happens is you do not have time to do this research. You have to ship, right? You've been brought on by a company that says, I need to ship this bicycle renting app in the next 2 months, right? And to do the perfect kind of personas and all that will take you at least about a year, right? So in the practical scenario, you are asked to build an aeroplane while you're flying it. Right? So what do you do in those kinds of circumstances? Right? In those kinds of circumstances, what you have to do is you have to focus on the behavioral data, and you're still collecting your demographic data, but you're focusing on the behavioral data, and using behavioral data, you're identifying your demographic segmentations. Does that make sense?
Yes, actually, I thought demographic data will give us the, like as you said, strategical things. So like, from business point of view, that is more important. And from features point of view, behavior will be more important. That's what was there in my mind. Right. So is it correct? Right.
Yeah, that is correct. But the main challenge is a lot of times, see, generally, if I raise my funds, if I have enough money to hire you, and this is how the funding cycle works. What I do is I have this idea. I will go out, I will probably prototype something, I will do a proof of concept, then I will go to a VC, right? And I will turn to the VC and say, listen, I've got this proof of concept, give me about $2 million and I'm ready to get going, right? The VC is now expecting you to ship and double your customer base every month, right? You have no time to look at demographics at that point. So what you're most likely doing is you're trying to find out who are the hardcore users of my product, right? Who are the medium users of my product and who are the light users of my product, right? Then you're trying to correlate, is there anything in the demographics that will differentiate them, right? And that's how you're doing. So a lot of times demographic might not just be age, it might be something else. So you have to identify what are the unique things that are differentiating all these people, and that's how you go about it. Okay?
Cool, nice, yeah.
Cool. So go ahead, Ganu.
What I understood, you're saying, first we collect the behavioral data, number of behavioral data, and then we, based on the behavioral data, the quantity of data, we are summarized and we can make it that is a average, right? That is the practice.
I'm trying to figure out. Not exactly, right? So using the behavioral data, you're trying to understand, okay, are there any groups of people that are different from each other?
Okay.
Okay. Once you differentiate them, then you're trying to figure out what their averages are.
Okay.
Okay. So you don't average and then break them. You break them and then you average them out to kind of figure out what demographic they're coming from. Okay.
Got it. Behavioral is a category, then you come to average.
Correct. So behavioral is going behavioral to demographic is a more practical approach given the fast cycles that we are working under. Working from demographic to behavioral is a scientifically clean method.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes we can't differentiate that behavior with the match with the demographics. So better first demographic and then we can go with the behavioral aspects.
Yeah, so the scientifically that is the right way, but practically that is nobody gives you the time to do that.
Yes, yes.
So one
example, go ahead, any other questions?
One example, Prasad, for example, we are taking a dress, right? We are giving the sizes of 32, 36, 38. So generally, just a question, who defined this? This is defined by industry or scientifically they research, etc. How they do?
No, it's defined according to the body shapes, basically. The shoulders, everyone has different shoulders. So again, the way we are making personas, there are, when we decide the size chart, it is depend upon the everybody's shoulders, basically. I mean, as a fashion designer, I know that maybe there are some other reasons also.
Yeah, so they basically exactly what Pooja was saying is you basically use ergonomic data to define buckets, right? But the larger thing, the more interesting thing where it all started off was actually during the World Wars, right? During the World Wars, what was necessary was you were recruiting thousands of people in a day. You had to clothe them, you had to dress them, you had to create a logistic system so that you were shipping stuff out to everybody in time, right? So the armies had to kind of define what are the sizes, how do they have to be and all that stuff. So there was a lot of research that was done on, what do you call shoulder sizes, arm lengths, all of that stuff to standardize and break it down, right? And those standards have then kind of been used to drive the apparel sizes and all of that, because now if you create a size large, you know that it is going to cover people from this place to this place. So that's how you kind of go about it. And the other thing is also you're breaking it down so that, you say, what is the minimum amount of resolution you need to have the maximum amount of savings. And if you say extra large, of course, extra large will cover any large and extra large together, right? But extra large is a small population. So if you waste a lot of cloth, then you basically wasted a lot more in production. So that's how they also look at, I need to minimize my wastage while maximizing the number of people that can wear my clothes. So there's a strategy there.
Got it. Why I'm relevanting, for example, if defining a age group, right? Maybe we have a standard. If this is a young age, high school, college, maybe this is a standard practice. Same way, maybe we can using that set of information for the demographic.
True, but again, my argument is that you have to look for your product, right? So in your case of the product, maybe age is not a definer, right? If you look at TikTok, right? And maybe not TikTok, because TikTok still age is different because different age groups behave differently. But I'm trying to understand, let's say email, right? Age doesn't necessarily define it, right? It is your profession that possibly defines it, right? Or it could be a level of education that possibly defines it. So what it is you're looking at the one or two key demographic elements that are better predictors of your behavior. So that's how you identify which demographic is likely to predict what kind of behavior you're likely to do.
So what I understood, that we don't go for blindly the thing based on our product, and we have to decide our demographic metrics.
Exactly. Right.
Got it. Thanks.
Okay. So everybody get this concept. Ishika, did I answer your question?
Yes, sir.
Perfect. Cool. So let's go back to where we were. Okay. So this is what today our goal was, to make sure you understand personas, right? And you understand what are the common mistakes. And again, my goal is not to teach you the scientifically perfect method, right? Because in reality, what we see is a lot of people come into the industry and we learn theory in a certain way, but then when we start seeing the industry doesn't work that way, we get frustrated and angry and upset, and we don't like it, right? And that reduces your efficiency and your effectiveness to build your career. So for me, I will tell you that this is not the right scientific method, but this is the right practical method. So our focus in all of these conversations is what is more practical and how do you kind of execute while you're doing your day-to-day job. That is the goal. Okay. So day one is, and also my thing is, there are a number of you that are also possibly looking for jobs, applying, creating your portfolios and all that. So I really do want to help you avoid these mistakes, especially if you're going into some of the more mature companies. They will look at your portfolios and make a lot of clear-cut decisions. Just like one artifact will help them realize your level of maturity. So you want to make sure that you are reflecting the appropriate skills that the hiring manager is looking for. Okay. So day one, we are looking at personas and common mistakes that designers do. I hope this is all clear. Everybody understand it. So if you understand, just type in yes, and then we'll go on to the next one. Awesome. Okay. Day two, this is a Prasad special. I'm going to talk about a technique called persona suicides. Okay. Doesn't necessarily mean that you're killing the personas, but there's a trick to that. But it is to teach you how you will use this technique called persona suicides to decide how you're going to lay out a page. Okay. What features are going to go in a page. So that is what we're going to do on day two, right? And then day three, we are going to look at how we will use the same thing to look at the strategy. How do you define the strategy of a product? Okay. So again, as designers, I believe that we are not just doing pages, we are defining the strategy of the product and the future of the company. So that is what we will look for between day two and day three. All right. So that's where we are. So make sure you're coming in tomorrow. There is homework that is there for you. Let's go on to the next one. Okay. So here's the deal. So all of you have this homework. And again, the more people that will put in their homework, the better you are, because you kind of get to see, put in your thoughts. You get to exercise what you've learned. Okay. So the idea is you're basically creating the personas for, let's say context, users looking for a place to live or, on rent in a new city. So somebody is coming into a new city and they want to rent a place. And you're creating an application that is helping people rent houses. Okay. So you have different personas. You have a student, a job seeker, and a working professional. Okay. Unmarried and married. So you have basically about 4 different persona groups that are there. Okay. What I want you to do is I want you to reflect and think, what kind of information would I put in here that would make it meaningful for the next person who lives. So imagine you are the guy who's generating the persona. You have to put in enough information that is meaningful for the designer who's looking at it. Okay. Any questions or thoughts at this point? Cool. Go ahead, Ishika.
So we need to make assumptions for things we will
Yes,
say
you will
and
be
do.
making assumptions, and that is something you just say up there. You just state that you're going to make assumptions, and I've made these assumptions, but ultimately you're trying to kind of, put yourself in the other person's shoes and kind of make these calls, right? This is not the ideal way of doing it, but at least what I'm trying to teach you is what is the minimum amount of information. That is the goal of the class. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Cool. Any other questions or thoughts?
Are we going to receive this through mail and then we have to type in there and then we have to submit, or we have to make it and submit it?
So Saurabh, what's the mode of delivery?
So we are going to share this in Discord channel name workshop. And then you can submit that in the LinkedIn post that we are going to make, which is the link we'll share once we make the post.
Okay. Okay.
And for
And
those
this is
of
the
you,
PDF that you can use and edit. Yeah.
For those of you that are new, the Discord channel will be shared. You can just join in. We have a lot of discussions every once in a while. People jump in. We have lots of meeting rooms. We sit, talk, discuss, and even probably even commiserate. So, mere naukri mein ye ho raha hai, aapke naukri mein kya ho raha hai? So, there's lots of these conversations happen. So, it's a nice little community where we all sit, talk, discuss. Okay. So, let's go to the next one. Part B, right? So if you believe that you've learned something in the session, I would just say, put out something that you found was interesting, surprising, insightful for you as a, as a LinkedIn post, on the LinkedIn post as a comment. So we will put something on LinkedIn, just put in comment, this was my surprise, this was my learning. So this is also a way for us to get the word out. But the other aspect is it's also a way for you to reflect on what you learned, what was surprising, what was interesting, what was insightful. So go ahead and tag all the other people that you think will be benefited by the workshop, and that'd be really helpful for us to spread the word out. Okay, let's go to the next one.
Done.
Awesome. So we're done. So thank you very much, guys. If there are no other questions, I'm going to drop off, and the Discord link is in the chat. So just make sure you click on it and then you can get going. Any questions or thoughts before we drop off?
No.
No.
Thank you.
No. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for
Awesome.
valuable time, Prasad. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye.
Good
Bye.
night, all. Bye.
Right, guys.
Bye.
Bye.